Morning. Hello. Hey, Izzy. Right up front. Awesome. So good to see everybody this morning. I brought a couple of things to show and tell, if that's okay. So, my name's Ryan Cross. I go by the call sign Fingers. So let me tell you something a little bit about that, because in the Air Force we do call signs. You might have seen that in movies like Top Gun or something. They do call signs. Yeah? Okay. Glad everybody's tracking with me. So, but in Top Gun they have really cool call signs, right? In the Air Force we don't do it that way. So there's kind of 3 different rules for call signs, and the first one is that it can't be too cool. So nobody gets Maverick, nobody gets Iceman, nobody gets Goose. None of those cool names do you get when you're in the Air Force. The second rule is that it's got to be something that you kind of messed up. So it's not like, this is something awesome I did and I get a call sign. It's like, this is my most embarrassing moment and I get a call sign for it. So the call sign's kind of a humbling experience, but it's something that you have to embrace, and you may get stuck with it for a long time, like I do. So we'll talk a little bit about, it's one thing to get the call sign, and then it's another to keep the call sign. Because as you move across different bases, every time you move, they might rename you based on something else that you did that maybe wasn't the best. So that's kind of call signs. And then the last thing about call signs is if it can be something that is a play on words or somehow goes with your last name, that's a bonus. And also they like to do acronyms with some call signs. So if you saw Top Gun Maverick, Bob was baby on board, right? So that was Bob. It sounds like a really basic call sign, but the acronym behind it makes it a little bit something more special. So for me, Fingers crossed. We'll talk a little bit about that and how I kept that. But let's go through a couple of things. So this is my pilot's helmet bag. So I don't carry all of these things in here all the time, but there's a couple of things that are pretty important. So we'll talk about it. So I flew the F-16, and that aircraft flies really fast. And at show of hands, anybody go to the Edwards Air Show a couple of weeks ago? We got a couple of people. Yeah. If you saw the Thunderbirds fly, you saw the F-16. That's what they fly. So when they fly and they're flying really fast and they turn really hard, it pulls a lot of G's. So if you weigh about 220 pounds like I do, 1 G is just me standing here and I weigh 220 pounds. If I turn as fast as the aircraft will let me, it's 9 G's. So it's 9 times that. So it's about 2,000 pounds. And when that happens, all the blood that's up here in your head then gets pushed down to your feet because that's the direction gravity goes. And when that happens, all the blood goes out of your brain, so it's not good. You see some of the results of that in Top Gun Maverick. So we wear these suits here, and we wear them kind of like jeans, and we put them on. They wrap around our legs, and then when we pull G's, it squeezes to push that blood back up so that we don't pass out. So if you've ever stood up really, really fast and you get kind of lightheaded and you kind of get a little tunnel vision and it gets dark because you stood up too fast, you feel a little bit dizzy, that's kind of what the feeling's like. That's really bad when you're going fast and you're pulling G's and you're flying a big, expensive airplane. So that's the first part. We've got gloves that we wear. You don't see them wear gloves in Top Gun Maverick or any of the Top Gun movies because I guess gloves aren't super cool, but we wear gloves because if there was a fire or there was something else inside the cockpit, then it's really good to wear gloves. There's also some sharp things inside of the cockpit that you sometimes have to worry about. Also got my helmet. So in here you got an oxygen mask. So you can breathe oxygen. When you fly up high into higher altitudes, the oxygen gets less, and so you have to breathe more oxygen. So you plug this in, and it gives you more oxygen the higher you fly. Also, when you're pulling G's, it will give you pure oxygen also to help you stay awake. Up here you've got a visor, and that's just like sunglasses that you would wear just because it's really bright up there sometimes. All right. And then finally, this is a different visor. There's another setup for the helmet. That's the helmet-mounted cueing system, and you need this special visor here for that. And what it'll do is it'll project like a hologram image on it, and so you can see aircraft displays right here in your eyes. So if you've worn like a virtual reality helmet or something, it's kind of like that. It goes there. So that's the show and tell stuff that I've got for you. Let's go ahead and go on. We'll go to the, let's see, I've got the clicker. There we go. So next chart, Dr. Wilson talked a little bit about Veterans Day. So who knows when Veterans Day is? When? Friday. Yeah. What's the date on Friday? Anybody? Almost. The 11th. So what's special about that? November 11th is when we celebrate Veterans Day. So we'll talk a little bit about the history of it. So November is the 11th month, and then we celebrate on the 11th day of the 11th month, and then it's supposed to be celebrated at 11/11. Historically, where that comes from is the end of World War I. World War I, they declared an armistice on November 11th at 11:11 a.m. And that's when the Axis and the Allies sides, they stopped fighting. And they said, we're going to go work this out, and we're going to work out the terms of peace after World War I. Back then, they didn't call it World War I, they just called it the Great War. Some people call it the war to end all wars, but that's not what happened. So on November 11th, 11/11, they signed the armistice. And something that came out of that, you see the pictures up there. On the upper left-hand corner, you'll see the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. So this is something that comes out of Armistice Day, which is what it was called before we called it Veterans Day. So Armistice Day is what we use, and then 3 different countries, America, England, and then France, they built memorials to remember what happened, and they buried unknown soldiers at each of these locations. So in the upper left, you've got Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. The lower left, you've got Westminster Abbey in England, and then on the right, you've got the Arc de Triomphe. They all have, and you see in the pictures there, their tomb for their unknown soldiers. And for a long time, we celebrated it as Armistice Day, and it was voted in and Congress acted on it in 1938. And then the next year, World War II started. And so over the years, we changed what we thought of. So it wasn't Armistice Day. We now thought of it as a Veterans Day. We expanded that. So there was World War II, there was the Korean War, and then we had the Vietnam War. And that's when they expanded it out to be all veterans who've served the nation either in war or in peace. So it's a little different than Memorial Day. You see normally the Arlington National Cemetery, and you see the flags on Memorial Day. That's when we celebrate the people who've given their lives. But on Veterans Day, we celebrate everybody, and I'm glad to see the slideshow that we already saw, to see all the veterans and see how close everybody was and how they were touched, and how important they are to us. All right, we'll go to the next slide. All right, so I was going to share a little bit of the story. So the picture up there, I don't know if so I'm in the lower left-hand corner. This is 20 years ago at the Air Force Academy when I was going to school. I grew up in the church. I went to church with my families in the Lutheran church, and I thought that I knew the Lord. And I got to the Air Force Academy and I joined this Bible study. It's a group of all guys. We called it the Fellas Bible Study, and these were the men that were in with me in the Fellas Bible Study. And this is where I really got to learn and know my Bible and see some of the differences between what I grew up and I understood, and then what I learned by reading my own Bible. And And I came to faith in Jesus, and I found out that it was more than just what I did on Sunday and going to church, and it was more than just who I hung out with and just believing that there was a God, but that it was more importantly, it was a relationship with Jesus and trusting him as my Savior and making him Lord of my life. And it changed a lot of things in my life. It changed the music I listened to. It changed the people that I hung out with. It changed the things that I did and the things that I was interested and focused on. And it changed the way I treated people. And I think it was really important as I was learning in the military, and it would take me through my career as a pilot. Okay, next chart. All right, so a couple different pictures. I flew 2 different airplanes. The first one was the F-16. We talked about that a little bit. You see that on the upper left-hand corner. And then you see the other picture, the MQ-9. So that's the Reaper. Some people call them drones. So I flew the F-16 for 4 years, and then I flew drones for 7 years. So it was 11 years total of flying. And you can see some of the family. Mrs. Cross and then my family. I'll get to talk to them in the second group here. So you can see them as they grew up with us throughout our career. But things don't always go the way we plan. I'm a planner. I love to plan. I love to know what I'm doing this afternoon. I love to know what I'm doing tomorrow, 3 months from now, a year from now, 5, 10, 15 years from now. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And God is super awesome. He's faithful through all of those things. So this is the big trial that I had personally. So this happened in 2016. I had a seizure one day. They did a scan. You see the picture of that scan on the top. You see 2 eyeballs at the top, and then you see a big tumor that was right around here. So I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. I had surgery in May of 2016. It was the day before our 10th wedding anniversary. So we celebrated our 10th wedding anniversary in the hospital. As I looked like that, kind of that upper right-hand picture, really gross. But it's the story. And me as a planner, it was really hard because I was on this path, and everything was going well. Everything was just as planned, and then something else happened. But it's the faith, and it's the family and its friends that really took us through. So the verse that really sticks with me and I focus on is Proverbs 16:9. So we're really close to that in our reading this morning. But it says, the heart of man plans his way. That's me. I plan my way. And then the Lord establishes his steps. So it's okay to plan. If you're a planner like me, that's totally okay. But you got to have a little bit of flexibility because God has a plan and it's already written for you. And we have faith in that, and we walk in that and focus on him. That's the big thing that I want to focus on there, is focusing on his plan and doing the best I can every single day based on what he gives to me and what he puts in front of me. So after having brain surgery, the Air Force says that we don't really want you to fly anymore because that's kind of scary to us. And we're worried that maybe that's not safe. So I had to figure out what I wanted to do after that. So you see my first day. Has anybody here taken a picture kind of like that for your first day of something? So I took a picture there. That was my first day at my real adult job. I work up in Palmdale at the Lockheed Skunk Works. So Skunk Works is what you see in Top Gun Maverick also, where they built the Dark Star for that movie. So you can see some of the different airplanes. There's a bunch of other airplanes that aren't on this slide, but in about 15, 20 years, maybe we'll be able to put those on the slide. Can't talk a whole lot about what I do there, but it's really fun as I continue, and I continue to serve. So but I wanted to do something where I could still serve serve the military and serve our country. So just because I can't do it in uniform and I can't fly anymore, I still found a way to do that, and that's what I do now. Thanks. So a little bit more recent photo of the family. You can see that up there. And the Edwards Air Show there on the right, and that's the Dark Star. I just wanted to show. Maybe you've seen some of those people around here, and if you don't, then say hey to them when you see them. So that's Natalie's my daughter. She's in 7th grade, and then Micah is in 9th grade, and I think you know Mrs. Cross. Nice. All right. So I get the question a lot of times. People say, "Man, there's so many switches in the cockpit. How do you deal with that? Like, how do you know what everything does?" And it's true, and it's hard. And I've got a really good story for you because it is hard. So as the video shows, if you can go ahead and play that again. Thanks. So as you look, and this panel over to the left, there's a bunch of switches there. So go ahead and go to the next slide. Get a little bit better picture of that. And I'm going to call your attention to 2 different switches. They're both round knobs, which is very important for this story. So there's one with a red arrow. That controls the strobe light that's on the top of the tail of the F-16. As you turn that to the right, it changes the strobe to flash in different patterns. And then you've got another switch, is the yaw trim. So you've got 3 different axes in airplanes. You've got pitch, which is up and down. You've got yaw, which is left and right. And then you've got roll, which is like your barrel roll. So that's kind of a tilting, like a corkscrew. So those are the 3 different axes that we use. So that switch is the yaw switch. So if you move it left, you turn to the left. If you move it right, you turn to the right. As you fly these aircraft, and these aircraft are getting to be about 30, 35 years old, and you pull 9 Gs, so it's a 30,000 pound airplane, and 30,000 pounds times 9 is a whole lot of weight. And you do that over the course of 30 years, and things kind of bend. They don't necessarily fly perfectly straight. It's like your old car that doesn't drive exactly straight down the road anymore. So we've got these switches, this yaw trim, which is the yellow one, that helps you make fine adjustments so that it flies pointed straight. Next. All right. So the story comes in. I'm air refueling one of the first nights I'm in Iraq. And I join up on the tanker, and that's kind of what it looks like when you're getting gas. It's a little bit different than pulling up at Sam's Club or Costco to get gas in an F-16. That's kind of what it looks like, but this was night, so it's night vision goggles, and it's a whole lot darker than that. And it's kind of like that first video where things were glowing green inside of the cockpit. I'm sitting there, I'm getting gas, and I connect, and the person on the other end says, "Hey sir, can you please turn off the strobe light?" Which is the red switch there. And I said, "Absolutely I can do that, but I kind of have my hands full. I'm flying, I've got my throttle here." So really quickly, I'm like, well, I know exactly where that switch is. I'm going to reach down really quick, and I'm going to grab it. I'm going to turn it left really hard, really fast, so that I turn off my lights. Instead of grabbing red, I grab yellow. So I'm connected to an airplane that's got 150,000 pounds of gas on it, and I'm about 15 to 20 feet away from it, and I pull the yellow switch all the way to the left. And so rather than pointing straight, I'm now pointing about this while I'm still connected. And I disconnect. Again, back to the talk about kind of most embarrassing moments, and just a great community that we have as fighter pilots. My flight lead, who witnessed it, made sure that he told everybody in the squadron what happened. And so they said that I fat-fingered the switches, and so my fingers call sign stuck just a little bit harder. All right, next. Top Gun Maverick. So you knew you couldn't come to a briefing with a fighter pilot and not see something from Top Gun Maverick in it. So, but that video is so cool for a lot of different reasons. So you see teamwork, it's not just Tom Cruise, it's not just Maverick. He's got a whole formation, then he's got a whole group of people that are on the ship. And then you've got another ship that's launching Tomahawk missiles that are starting the fight. What I really like is they launch the missiles and the guy says, man, there's no turning back now. And I think as a Christian, I think that's super, super cool. So there's a couple different scriptures I wanted to talk through. The first one comes out of Hebrews 12. So it starts with a therefore, and I've heard a lot, and if there's a therefore, you got to know what the therefore is there for. So we go back to Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11 is the chapter on faith. We read about and we get recounted different members, different people in the Old Testament that we know their stories. It's Abraham, it's Isaac, it's Jacob, it's Rahab. All of your Old Testament stories that you've learned, it talks about those people and it talks about the faith that they displayed. And it talks about that it was commended to them, but they didn't get to share in the full benefit that we do. And it wasn't until Jesus came. And then it goes and starts off and says, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, we have this great cloud of witnesses, which are those people of great faith from the Old Testament. Throw off everything that hinders, get rid of the sin that entangles us, so that we can run with perseverance the race that God has for us. So, even if you're a planner like me, there's a race. There's something that God has for you. Have the faith to do that. Fix your eyes on Jesus. The other part that you see in that video is he says mark when he starts that 2-minute and 30-second countdown. And then 2 mark, 3 mark, 4 mark. And then you've even got the guy on the ship who starts his stopwatch. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody has the same time that they start. And they know what their goal is. They know the race. They know the end of the race. And they, maybe not in the movie, they're not fixing their eyes on Jesus. But us as Christians, we know that that's where we focus. And that's where we fix our eyes. And that clip also makes me think of the Great Commission, where Jesus tells us to go out and make disciples of all nations. That's the other piece there. All right? All right.